The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewports of the diplomatic ship, a silent ocean that carried both hope and fear. Commander Elias Ward stood alone in the observation deck, watching the distant lights burn against the darkness. He had seen stars before. He had served in deep space missions for years. But this moment was different. Tonight, he was not a soldier. He was humanity's first ambassador to the Solari Empire, a civilization far older and far greater than anything Earth had ever known. He straightened his uniform, though no one was there to see him. The weight of his task pressed against his shoulders. Every step he would take, every word he would say would be remembered by both species. Humanity had just taken its first steps into the wider galactic stage, and he, a single man, had been chosen to carry their flag. Behind him, the doors slid open, and his aide's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Commander, we're arriving at the capital. The Solari delegation is waiting." Elias gave a small nod. He did not answer quickly, not because he doubted himself, but because he understood the gravity of it all. This was history, and he had to move carefully. The capital world of the Solari Empire appeared before him through the viewport. It was a sphere of silver-blue oceans and glowing cities, its atmosphere glowing faintly as if the entire planet itself were alive. The cities shone like constellations spread across the surface, linked by veins of light that pulsed softly in rhythm. As the ship descended, he saw the grand spires of the Solari royal city, towers that reached high into the clouds, sculpted with an elegance no human engineer could match. They seemed less like buildings and more like works of art, shaped by hands that had never rushed or compromised. When Elias finally stepped down onto Kalari soil, the reception hall was filled with alien dignitaries, their tall and slender forms, clothed in shimmering robes. Their eyes were brighter than human eyes, reflecting the lights of the chamber like liquid silver. They stood in perfect silence as he approached, and their stillness was unsettling. Then, from the center of the chamber, she stepped forward. Princess Solara, heir to the Solari throne, was unlike any being he had ever seen. Her presence carried a weight, not of force but of calm authority. Her features were fine and graceful, but her gaze was sharp, as if she saw not just the man before her, but everything he had been and everything he might become. "Commander Elias Ward," she said, in a clear melodic voice, "humanity has sent you here as their chosen voice. The Solari Empire welcomes you." Elias bowed slightly, the gesture chosen after weeks of careful study on Solari customs. "I am honored, Princess Solara. Humanity seeks friendship, and I hope to prove worthy of the trust given to me." A faint smile touched her lips, though the court around her remained stone-faced. For the Solari, emotions were rare to show, and every flicker of expression carried meaning. The banquet began soon after, a grand affair within a hall carved of crystal and flowing water. The table stretched long, filled with delicacies that shimmered with strange colors and scents unknown to Earth. The Solari nobles spoke softly among themselves, their voices like distant echoes. Elias sat near the princess, every movement calculated, every response measured. Yet as the evening wore on, he noticed something strange. Princess Solara was watching him more than anyone else, not in suspicion but with curiosity, as though she were trying to solve a puzzle. And then, without warning, she rose from her seat. The hall went silent. Solara raised her hand, and her voice carried across the chamber. "Tonight, before the eyes of the Solari, I speak a truth I can no longer keep within." She turned her gaze to Elias, her silver eyes burning with strange determination. "Human, I claim you as mine. I choose you as my consort. I choose you as the one who will stand at my side when I take the throne." The hall erupted in gasps. Nobles whispered, furiously. Some looked outraged, others shocked, others fearful. Elias himself froze, unable to believe what he had just heard. He had come to represent humanity, not to become part of an alien royal scandal. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came. He could only stare at the princess, who met his gaze, without hesitation. And then, before the room could settle, another voice cut sharply through the chaos. "If you claim him," the voice said, strong and defiant, "then I demand my right as well." From across the hall another figure stood. She was younger, but her bearing was just as fierce. Princess Kaelin, Solara's sister, known for her rebellious spirit. Her eyes blazed as she stepped forward, pointing at Elias as though he were a prize to be seized. "If my sister thinks this human worthy, then I will not be left behind. I demand that he take me as well." The hall broke into shouts. The nobles were horrified. Such a thing had never been spoken aloud in Solari history. To bind oneself to a foreigner was already scandal enough, but for two princesses to fight over one man, worse, a human, was unthinkable. Elias felt every eye in the chamber turn to him. He was no longer a guest, no longer just a diplomat. A single moment he had become the center of a storm that could shake the empire itself. Solara stood calm, her hand resting on the table, her gaze unshaken. "You cannot claim what I have already spoken for," she said to her sister. "The human is mine." Kaelin laughed sharply, her tone like fire against Solara's ice. "You speak as if he were an object to keep. He is not yours yet, and if he is truly worthy, then he will prove it by standing with both of us." Elias's chest tightened. He had faced war. He had faced the unknown of deep space, but never had he imagined that his greatest trial would be standing between two alien princesses who demanded his hand in front of their entire empire. The nobles began to argue among themselves. Some cried that this was disgraceful. Others whispered that perhaps it was destiny. And through it all, Elias remained silent, his mind racing. He was human, far from home, surrounded by powers and traditions he barely understood. Yet in this moment, one thing was clear. Whatever choice he made, whatever words he spoke, would not only decide his fate, but perhaps the fate of humanity's place in the galaxy. The hall waited. The two sisters waited. And Elias, heart pounding, finally drew in a slow breath. The tension in the royal hall did not ease, even as the servants quietly adjusted plates and refilled glowing drinks. Elias stood frozen, his mind spinning faster than any starship he had ever piloted. The sisters' demands hung over him like a storm cloud threatening to crush not just his calm, but the fragile trust between humanity and the Solari Empire. Solara's gaze softened slightly, though her tone remained firm. "You may speak now, human. What is your decision?" Elias swallowed hard. I am honored," he began, "truly honored by your trust. But I cannot make a choice in haste." His voice, though steady, carried the weight of the situation. "I did not come here to be a prize nor to take sides in a royal dispute. I came to build friendship and understanding between our peoples. That is my duty." Kaelin's eyes narrowed. "You speak of duty, human. That is fine for words, but actions must prove you worthy. Can you stand beside one of us? Can you stand beside both?" Elias met her gaze, noting the fire there, the challenge, the daring that mirrored the fierce determination he had seen in humans fighting impossible odds back home. He could see why the Solari prized strength and skill, though he knew their definitions of strength often differed from humanity's. "Strength is not always measured in skill or power," he replied carefully. "Sometimes it is measured by the courage to face what is unknown, the patience to listen, and the will to do what is right." A murmur ran through the court. Some Solari nobles frowned, others appeared intrigued. Elias realized he had struck a nerve, not with words of submission, but with words that suggested a different kind of value, human value. Solara stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough that only he could hear. "You are different, human. Most of our kind would bow or falter. You speak as if you are free, even in the presence of royalty." Elias could not hide his surprise. "I do not seek freedom as a prize, but I cannot compromise my beliefs, not for honor, not for love, not for fear." Solara studied him with a thoughtful expression. "That may be why I chose you," she whispered. "Our kind lacks your stubbornness, your refusal to bend. Perhaps this is what the Empire needs. Kaelin, standing a step behind, crossed her arms and leaned slightly forward. And yet stubbornness alone is not enough. You will need more than words to prove yourself. The court buzzed with whispers, and some younger nobles began speculating about the implications. If a human could withstand the scrutiny of the Solari court, and if he could win favor with both princesses, what might it mean for the balance of power in the empire? Elias could sense the tension building, and he knew it would only grow. Later, when the banquet ended and the guests departed, the sisters escorted him to the palace gardens. The air was crisp, scented with strange, flowering plants that shimmered faintly under the twin moons. The gardens stretched endlessly, with rivers of light flowing alongside pools that reflected the stars. The Solari had shaped nature itself into art, yet even amidst all this beauty, Elias could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Solara spoke first, her voice calm but firm. Elias, the court may not understand your hesitation, but know this. I do not demand you abandon your values. I demand only that you show what you are capable of. Humanity has a strange power, one that our kind cannot fully comprehend. Will you prove it? Elias nodded slowly. I will. But I need to know what proving it means. What test do you expect? Kaelin smirked. Tests, yes. Not of brute force alone, but of mind, heart, and spirit. The Solari High Council will decide the exact trial, but know this. Your choices will affect not only my sister and me, but the entire empire. The words hit him like a comet. The trial would not be a simple demonstration of skill. It would be a challenge that could define his role in the galaxy. Yet for the first time, Elias felt a surge of determination. He had faced impossible odds in human wars, survived ships lost to the void, and solved problems that seemed insurmountable. If humanity had any chance of proving its worth among the stars, now was the moment. In the days that followed, Elias was introduced to Solari traditions and customs, each more elaborate than the last. He learned the protocols of court speech, the precise movements required for formal greetings, and the complex social dances that determined status and favor. Every lesson was a challenge, but Elias found that his human adaptability served him well. Where aliens saw a rigid hierarchy, he saw patterns and strategies, ways to navigate the court without offending anyone. Yet the sisters remained constant tests in themselves. Solara observed him with calm intensity, watching his reactions to every minor challenge, every question, every gesture. Kaelin was more unpredictable, often setting traps or provoking debates to see how he would respond. Once she argued about the merits of human strategy versus Solari logic, leading him through an exhausting night of reasoning and debate. In the end, Elias had not only held his own, but had earned grudging respect from the princess. Through all this, he began to notice subtle things about the Solari that their court would never openly admit. They admired boldness, even when they pretended to value perfection. They feared failure, but they were drawn to ingenuity. And above all, they were fascinated by humans, not for power, but for the unpredictability, the spirit, the refusal to submit fully to rules. One evening, while walking along a garden path illuminated by bioluminescent flowers, Elias paused to consider what lay ahead. The trial, he said aloud, speaking more to himself than to the princesses, will test everything. But maybe that is the point, to show them truly that humanity is not weak, that we belong here. Solara's voice broke the silence. You are already proving it, human. Simply by standing here and refusing to be claimed, you have challenged centuries of tradition. That alone is enough to change minds. Kaelin laughed softly from a nearby stone bridge. Change minds, yes, but the Empire will not bend easily, and neither will we. You will need more than words to survive the trial of union. Elias frowned. Trial of union? That is the test you mentioned before? Solara nodded. Yes. It is designed to measure loyalty, intelligence, courage, and the ability to adapt. Every consort, every candidate must pass it. But know this, it is more dangerous than anything you have faced. Many who attempt it do not succeed. A chill ran down his spine. Yet amidst the fear, a sense of determination blossomed. Humans had survived far greater odds, and he would not shy from this challenge. In the following days, preparations for the trial began in earnest. Elias was taught the history of the empire, the stories of past consorts, the politics of the High Council, and the secret networks of power that influenced decisions behind the scenes. He trained physically, practicing agility, endurance, and reflexes that were subtly different from human norms, adapted to Solari terrain and combat techniques. He trained mentally, solving complex puzzles designed to test logic, creativity, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. Throughout it all, the sisters remained beside him. Solara provided guidance, sometimes cryptic but always purposeful. Kalen offered challenges, often pushing him into uncomfortable or unexpected situations. Their presence was a constant reminder that the trial would not be simple, that he would be tested in ways beyond physical endurance or intelligence. He would need to understand them, to anticipate their thoughts, to earn their trust. One night, as Elias lay in the guest quarters assigned to him, he thought about what the trial would demand. He realized that success would require more than human cleverness. It would require heart, courage, and the ability to inspire others. He would need to show the Solari not just what humans could do, but why humans mattered. As he drifted into a light sleep, he felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time, he believed that he might not just survive the trial but also prove something greater, that humanity could stand among the stars as equals, capable of shaping the future of entire civilizations. The morning came, with sunlight, filtering through alien leaves and casting strange patterns across the garden floors. Elias rose, ready to face whatever the day and the trial might bring. He was no longer just a guest or a diplomat. He was a participant in a test that could decide the destiny of two princesses, the Empire, and humanity itself. And as he walked, alongside Solara and Kalen, he realized that the path ahead would not be easy. But he also realized that humans had never truly taken the easy path before. Courage, creativity, stubbornness, these were qualities that had carried humanity across the void of space, across war, and across the boundaries of possibility. And, now in the heart of the Solari Empire, Elias Ward would need all of them. The morning of the trial of union arrived quietly, with the palace garden bathed in a soft pearly light. Elias stood at the edge of a platform that overlooked the sprawling grounds. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of alien blossoms that seemed to hum softly in the breeze. Solara and Kalen flanked him, their expressions calm but unreadable, as if they were testing him once again before the trial had even begun. A Solari attendant approached, their voice melodic, yet precise. "Commander Elias Ward, the High Council awaits you. The trial is about to begin." Elias nodded, his stomach tight with anticipation. He had prepared as best as he could. He had studied Solari history, learned their customs, trained in their physical techniques, and practiced mental exercises designed to stretch his human mind. Yet he knew that no preparation could fully convey the reality of the trial. As he followed the attendant through the crystal corridors of the palace, he noticed the subtle glances from the nobles lining the halls. Some were skeptical, some curious, and some openly impressed. To them, he was a human, a creature of flesh and bone, stepping into a world that had long believed itself superior to all others. The weight of expectation pressed down on him, but Elias drew a slow, deep breath. Humanity had faced the impossible before. This was just another challenge. The chamber of the High Council opened, revealing a vast room that stretched higher than any human building he had ever seen. The walls shimmered like liquid glass, reflecting the twin moons outside, and the floor was polished to the point of invisibility, showing the glowing streams of energy that ran beneath the city. At the far end, 12 council members sat in an elevated semicircle, their silver eyes focused sharply on him. Solara and Kalen stepped slightly forward. Solara's voice was calm but firm. "Commander, the trial is not merely a test of skill or strength. It is a measure of your ability to lead, to understand, and to inspire. You must navigate challenges designed to evaluate your mind, your spirit, and your heart. Kaylin added, her tone sharper. And remember, human, the trial is not fair. It is designed to push you to your limits. Those who fail are not just dismissed, they are forgotten. Their attempts erased from memory. Only those who succeed leave a mark on history. Elias felt a chill, but it was tempered by determination. I understand, he said simply. I will face it. The first test began immediately. He was led to a vast chamber filled with shifting platforms suspended over a bottomless void. The platforms moved unpredictably, some disappearing entirely and reappearing elsewhere. At the other side of the chamber, a pedestal glowed with a crystal of unknown origin. You must reach the crystal, one of the council members intoned. Only then will the first part of your trial be complete. Elias took a careful step forward. The platform wavered slightly, and he felt a rush of vertigo. Humans were not built for zero gravity or floating walkways, but he relied on instinct and balance honed through years of training. One careful step led to another, and he began to move with caution, testing each platform before fully committing his weight. Halfway across, a platform shifted suddenly, tilting beneath him. He stumbled, reaching out instinctively. To his surprise, a hand grasped his arm. Solara's hand. She had quietly moved alongside him, guiding him without speaking. Her presence grounded him, reminding him that he was not alone. Kaylin appeared, moments later, stepping onto an adjacent platform with her usual mischievous expression. Do not rely solely on my sister, she teased. This test is as much about your mind as it is about your skill. You must think, human, or the void will claim you. Elias nodded, focusing. He analyzed the movement patterns of the platforms using logic and observation rather than brute strength. His human ingenuity allowed him to anticipate the shifts before they happened, stepping nimbly and carefully. When he finally reached the pedestal, the crystal pulsed with a soft light, signaling completion of the first test. The council members nodded, their expressions unreadable. You have passed the initial trial, one said, but do not grow complacent. The challenges ahead are more complex, more dangerous, and will test every aspect of your being. The next phase brought him to a simulation chamber, where he faced scenarios meant to test his leadership and decision-making under pressure. Holographic images projected entire cities under threat. Alien forces moving strategically to conquer, burn, or subvert the simulated populations. You must save your people. Kaylin's voice echoed in the chamber, though she was nowhere to be seen. Every choice has consequences. Your judgment will determine life or death. Fail, and the trial fails you. Elias moved quickly, but thoughtfully. He coordinated defensive strategies, organized evacuation routes, and assigned simulated forces to critical positions. Every decision required speed, foresight, and adaptability. The holographic cities responded dynamically, changing in response to his choices. Several times disaster struck unexpectedly, forcing him to improvise. Solara watched silently, her eyes calm but alert. You are thinking as a human, not as a Scifi. That is good. Your perspective allows you to see solutions. We cannot imagine. That is why you were chosen. The simulation ended, and Elias realized that the room was filled with an energy that vibrated against his skin, a subtle recognition of his success. The council members' expressions softened slightly, though their silver eyes still held scrutiny. You have demonstrated skill, ingenuity, and courage, the council member intoned. But courage alone is not enough. You must demonstrate compassion, loyalty, and moral strength. The final phase will test the unity of your spirit with those who walk beside you. Elias was led to a chamber that seemed impossibly large. In its center was a crystal prism that split light into 1,000 colors, casting rainbows across the walls. Around the prism were complex symbols that shifted like living patterns. You must navigate the prism of unity, the council explained. To succeed, you must work with both princesses. Alone, no human has passed this test. Only by understanding, cooperating, and supporting each other can the path become clear. The chamber's floor shifted, revealing a network of narrow pathways above a seemingly endless abyss. As Elias stepped forward, Solara and Kalen flanked him, their expressions focused but calm. The first challenge appeared almost immediately. A path crumbled beneath his feet, forcing a leap to a distant platform. Kalen extended a hand and Elias grabbed it instinctively, swinging himself forward. On the next platform, Solara guided him subtly, indicating safe steps with gentle movements. The chamber tested them constantly. Platforms shifted unpredictably, obstacles appeared suddenly, and illusions tried to confuse them. At times it seemed the trial was impossible. Elias realized that the challenge was not merely physical, it was a test of trust, of intuition, and of understanding each other's strengths. Kalen's sharp instincts saved them from a falling bridge, while Solara's calm assessment allowed them to avoid traps that required patience and precision. Elias found himself learning their patterns, understanding their reasoning, and predicting their movements. For the first time, he realized that the trial was not about individual skill, but about human adaptability and empathy. Hours passed, though the trial seemed endless. They moved with increasing coordination, their steps in harmony, their trust in each other growing. Elias felt a strange sense of connection, not romantic, not forced, but a recognition of shared purpose and mutual respect. Finally, they reached the central prism. Elias extended his hand, touching the crystal. Light poured into the chamber, washing over them with warmth and brilliance. The pathways stabilized, the shifting symbols settled, and a calm sense of completion filled the space. The council members' voices echoed in the chamber. Commander Elias Ward, you have succeeded. You have demonstrated courage, ingenuity, adaptability, and unity. You have proven the worth of humanity in a manner unparalleled in Solari history. Elias exhaled, relief flooding through him. The trial had been far more than he expected, yet he had survived, adapted, and succeeded. He looked at Solara and Kalen, who nodded subtly, acknowledging his achievement. You have done more than survive, Solara said softly. You have shown that humans are not merely capable of keeping pace with the Solari. They can surpass expectation, redefine what is possible, and inspire change, Kalen added, her sharp grin softening into a genuine smile. And perhaps, human, you have earned the right to shape your own destiny, not merely follow tradition. Elias felt a quiet pride, not just for himself, but for humanity. They had entered a world that doubted them, a world built on perfection and rules, and yet he had shown that their courage, creativity, and stubborn spirit could earn respect even among the stars. As he left the chamber, escorted by the two princesses, Elias understood that the trial was more than a test, it was a message. Humanity had arrived, and in their unpredictability, resilience, and heart, they could stand among the greatest civilizations in the galaxy. And for the first time, he felt the weight of possibility, not as a burden, but as an invitation. The morning after the trial of union, the palace felt different. Elias walked through the corridors with Solara and Kalen at his sides, but now the eyes of the court followed him with quiet curiosity rather than judgment. The whispers had not stopped. They had only changed. No longer were they about scandal. They were about possibility. A human had survived where many Solari nobles had failed. The court could no longer deny his worth. Solara led him to the council chamber, a place that seemed to float above the city, its walls transparent, revealing the vast oceans and gleaming towers below. Elias, she said, her tone measured, the council wishes to discuss the outcome of your trial. You must understand. Surviving is not enough. They will question your influence, your ideas, and your loyalty. Elias nodded, steeling himself. He had expected this. A challenge like the trial of union would not end with applause. It was only the beginning. The council chamber was filled with the High Council members, each seated in their elevated positions. Their silver eyes glinted as Elias entered, their expressions unreadable. Some seemed impressed, others cautious. The weight of centuries of tradition pressed against him. A council elder spoke first. "Commander Ward, you have passed the trial that has defeated many of our own people. But the Solari Empire faces challenges that extend beyond personal skill. Our enemies watch closely. The political factions within our own court plot continuously. Tell us, human, what is your strategy to maintain unity and stability?" Elias took a deep breath. Humans often faced impossible odds and lived to fight another day. He drew on that experience, speaking clearly, without hesitation. Unity comes from respect and understanding. I do not pretend to know everything about your people, but I have observed how fear, pride, and secrecy weaken even the strongest societies. To maintain stability, the Solari must value honesty, listen to all voices, and act decisively when danger arises. The council murmured. Some leaned forward, clearly intrigued. Elias pressed on. "I will help guide, not dominate. I will act as a bridge between factions, between ideas, and between humanity and the Solari. My loyalty is to what is right, not to any single faction. That is the strength humanity brings. Clarity when tradition clouds judgment." Solara's eyes softened. "Your words are bold, human, yet thoughtful. The council has never heard such honesty from an outsider. You may have a future here beyond what you imagine." Kaelin smirked, her sharp energy cutting through the formality. "Or you may find that being honest is dangerous. The court is filled with those who would see you fail. Do not forget that." Elias understood her warning. His survival in the trial had earned respect, but it had also made him a target. In Idai, the days that followed, subtle challenges emerged. Ministers questioned his suggestions, nobles whispered conspiracies, and he began noticing coded glances between certain factions. Some sought to ally with him, others tested his patience, hoping to provoke mistakes. But Elias was not a man easily intimidated. He relied on human observation, intuition, and adaptability. He learned to read subtle cues, to respond with calm precision, and to anticipate moves before they were made. Each encounter, each conversation, became a new trial, one that demanded political skill as much as courage. Meanwhile, the sisters remained close. Solara guided him with gentle advice, teaching him the history of factions, the importance of protocol, and the hidden meanings behind every ceremonial act. Kaelin challenged him constantly, forcing him to think creatively, to negotiate, and to act decisively under pressure. Their combined influence honed him, shaping him into someone the Solari could not ignore. One afternoon, as Elias practiced diplomatic discourse in a simulated council session, a sudden message arrived. The Solari archives had intercepted intelligence. A rogue faction from the outer systems was preparing an incursion. They had no official declaration of war, but the report suggested spies, saboteurs, and possibly assassins were already on their way to the capital. Elias's heart pounded. The threat was real, immediate, and complex. It was unlike the controlled challenges of the trial. This was chaotic, unpredictable, and deadly. He quickly gathered Solara and Kaelin. "Their plans are subtle," he explained. "They will not attack openly. They will try to weaken the court from within, turning factions against each other. We need to anticipate, prevent sabotage, and secure our allies. We cannot react blindly." Solara's eyes sharpened. "You understand strategy far more quickly than I expected. This is why I chose you. Your perspective is unlike any Solari I have ever seen," Kaelin added, her voice taut with energy. "And yet, strategy alone is not enough. We must be ready to act physically if the situation demands. Are you prepared for that?" Elias nodded. "I have survived far worse in my life. I can adapt." The next days were a flurry of preparation. They inspected palace security, analyzed, the movement of courtiers and secretly trained loyal guards in human tactics that emphasized flexibility and unpredictability. Elias noticed that the Solari often relied on precision and ritual, which made them vulnerable to unorthodox strategies. Humanity's unpredictability became a weapon in itself. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the capital, a subtle attack began. Small incidents, missing files, sabotaged equipment, whispers of betrayal, erupted throughout the court. Elias was already prepared. He acted quickly, identifying patterns, predicting moves, and setting countermeasures. Where the Solari might panic or blame each other, he relied on observation and logic. Solara and Kalen moved alongside him seamlessly. Solara commanded her loyalists with quiet authority, diffusing tensions and maintaining order. Kalen confronted aggressors head-on, uncovering hidden threats before they could escalate. Together, the three of them formed a triad of intellect, courage, and human intuition. By dawn, the incursion had been largely neutralized. Spies were captured, sabotage prevented, and the rogue faction's plans exposed. The court, which had been tense and fractured, now regarded Elias with a mixture of awe and respect. For the first time, humans were not merely tolerated, they were admired. Yet Elias understood that this victory came with new responsibilities. Political power was as dangerous as any battlefield. His decisions would ripple through the empire, and each choice could create new allies or enemies. He began meeting in secret with loyal ministers, building coalitions and creating plans that balanced justice, pragmatism, and humanity's moral perspective. Through it all, the sisters remained by his side. Solara's quiet wisdom provided a stabilizing force, while Kalen's daring energy forced him to adapt and innovate. He realized that his bond with them was not simply personal, it was strategic, necessary, and, in many ways, transformative for the empire. The days turned into weeks. Elias became a symbol of human ingenuity and courage, navigating court politics, diffusing threats, and advising on reforms that would strengthen the empire. His approach was unlike anything the Solari had seen. He combined logic, empathy, and decisive action, showing that humanity could be a force of change without domination. Despite the success, tension lingered. The rogue faction had retreated, but their ambitions had not died. They would return, and more powerful challenges would follow. The court's political landscape remained treacherous, and some nobles continued to plot in silence. Elias knew that survival and influence would demand constant vigilance, careful observation, and unwavering courage. One evening, as he walked with Solara along a balcony overlooking the city, she spoke softly. "Elias, you have changed the court. You have shown that humans are not weak, and you have earned respect in ways we could not anticipate. But you must remember, respect alone does not secure peace. You will need strategy, patience, and allies." He nodded. "I understand. Humanity has faced impossible odds before. We adapt, we survive, and we find a way forward. That is what I intend to do here." Kalen appeared suddenly from the shadows, her grin mischievous but sincere. "And you will do it in ways we cannot even imagine. That is the value you bring, human. You are unpredictable, stubborn, and inspiring." Elias allowed himself a small smile. "Then we will face what comes next together." The sisters nodded, and, for the first time, he felt a deep sense of purpose. The trial of union had been only the beginning. The political intrigues, the threats from rival factions, and the fragile stability of the empire were challenges on a scale far greater than any physical or mental test he had faced. Yet Elias understood that humanity had a role to play, not as observers, not as outsiders, but as active participants shaping the future of a civilization far older and wiser than his own. In the quiet moments that followed, he gazed at the horizon, where the twin moons hung low over the city. The empire was vast, complex, and filled with danger, but it was also filled with potential. And he, a human among the Kalari, had the chance to prove that courage, ingenuity, and heart could change history Elias knew that the days ahead would demand everything he had: skill, intelligence, courage, and wisdom. Yet he also knew that he had already shown the Solari that humans were not to be underestimated. They could survive trials, navigate politics, and inspire change. And as the stars above the city shimmered in silent approval, he felt the stirrings of a new era, not just for the Solari Empire but for humanity among the stars. The next chapter of his journey was beginning, and the human spy. The days that followed the exposure of the rogue faction were tense but hopeful. Elias walked through the palace corridors with a quiet determination, knowing that his influence had grown, but that danger still lingered in the shadows. The court was no longer filled with whispers of doubt. Now the nobles watched him with a mixture of awe, caution, and curiosity. Every move he made carried weight, and every decision could ripple across the empire. Solara and Kalen were his constant companions, their presence a steady reminder of both challenge and support. Solara had taught him the subtleties of leadership, the art of diplomacy, and the quiet power of patience. Kalen had forced him to think creatively, to anticipate threats before they materialized, and to act decisively when circumstances demanded courage. Together they formed a triad of influence that no single faction could easily oppose. One morning, the High Council convened an emergency session. Intelligence reports indicated that the rogue faction was regrouping, planning a coordinated strike not just against the capital but against allied systems across the empire. The council debated strategies, each member arguing from their own perspective, their voices rising in heated discussion. Elias listened carefully, analyzing each proposal. He could see where tradition blinded them to opportunity, where pride clouded judgment, and where hesitation could lead to disaster. When the room fell silent, he stepped forward. "The enemy assumes we will act as the Solari always have," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "They expect precision, adherence to protocol, and hesitation. We will act differently. We will use unpredictability, coordination, and trust. We will defend not just with force, but with strategy, intelligence, and unity." A murmur ran through the council. Some nodded, others frowned, unsure of a human daring to instruct the empire's oldest governing body. Solara's eyes met his, filled with quiet approval. Kalen leaned slightly forward, her expression sharp with excitement. Elias continued, outlining a plan that relied on rapid communication, decentralized responses, and coordinated defenses across multiple systems. He paired human intuition with Solari precision, creating strategies that no faction could predict. The council debated, challenged, and revised, but by the end, they agreed. Elias's plan would be implemented. The first phase of the operation began immediately. Solari fleets moved with silent efficiency, patrolling borders, protecting key installations, and intercepting messages to prevent misinformation. Scouts reported unusual movements in outer systems, indicating that the rogue faction's forces were consolidating. Elias coordinated with Solara and Kalen, monitoring progress and adjusting tactics as new information arrived. Within the capital, preparations were equally intense. Palaces were secured, loyal guards stationed strategically, and communication networks reinforced. Elias trained a select team of human and Solari operatives in techniques that emphasized flexibility and adaptation, preparing them for sudden, unpredictable threats. He knew that the greatest danger often came not from open battle, but from surprise, deception, and miscalculation. Days passed in a blur of planning, training, and constant vigilance. The tension in the city was palpable. Whispers of fear mingled with curiosity about how a human could hold such influence. Yet Elias remained calm, relying on observation, logic, and human ingenuity to anticipate the enemy's moves. Solara and Kalen stood beside him at every turn, guiding, supporting, and occasionally challenging him to see situations from new perspectives. Then, the attack began. It was swift, coordinated, and unlike anything the Solari had faced. Saboteurs attempted to disable critical systems, while small strike teams infiltrated key positions. The palace shook with the force of their assault, alarms blaring as the defenders responded. Elias moved quickly, directing defenses, analyzing patterns, and adapting tactics in real time. Where the Solari relied on tradition and pre-planned responses, he introduced unpredictability. Forces moved in unexpected directions, intercepting attackers before they could strike critical targets. Holographic maps of the city flickered as he coordinated counterattacks, every decision calculated, precise, and adaptive. Solara led loyal forces to protect civilians and maintain order. Her calm authority reassured the citizens, preventing panic from spreading. Kaelin confronted enemy infiltrators directly, her energy and daring inspiring her soldiers to act with courage. Elias noticed that their combined efforts created a synergy he had never seen before. Human intuition, Solara's command, and Kaelin's daring working together seamlessly. Hours passed in a tense struggle. The rogue faction's forces were clever and persistent, but Elias's strategies anticipated their every move. He coordinated small teams to intercept infiltrators, rerouted defensive systems to counter sabotage, and used the city's architecture to create choke points and ambushes. Every setback was met with swift adaptation, every surprise met with calm precision. By the afternoon, the tide began to turn. The rogue faction's coordination faltered as Elias's unpredictability disrupted their plans. Their strike teams were isolated and neutralized, saboteurs captured, and communication lines restored. The city, though battered, remained intact. Civilians cheered cautiously as news spread that the human ambassador had not only survived, but had led the defense to success. The High Council convened immediately after the conflict, evaluating the outcome. Many Solari nobles admitted quietly or reluctantly that Elias's human perspective had made the difference. Where their traditions had left them vulnerable, his adaptability and courage had preserved the capital, saved countless lives, and secured the loyalty of key factions. Solara spoke first, her voice steady and filled with quiet authority. "Commander Ward, you have shown that humanity is not merely capable of surviving our world, but of guiding it when necessary. You have earned not just respect, but trust, and the gratitude of the entire empire," Kaelin added, her usual sharpness softened with genuine admiration. "And you have proven that even those we consider outsiders can shape history when they act with courage, intelligence, and heart. Your actions have saved lives, stabilized the court, and shown what humans are capable of." Elias felt a deep sense of fulfillment, though he did not allow pride to cloud his focus. "I acted not alone," he said, looking at the two sisters. "Solara, Kaelin, you guided, supported, and challenged me. This was our victory together. Humanity is strong, but it is even stronger when we act in unity with those we trust." The council acknowledged his words with nods, the room vibrating with a newfound respect for the human ambassador. For the first time, Elias understood that his place in the empire was not temporary or symbolic. He had become an integral part of a civilization far older and wiser than his own. In the following weeks, the court began to stabilize. Factions reconciled, reforms were implemented, and the rogue faction's influence was diminished. Elias continued to advise, not dictate, blending human innovation with Solari tradition. His strategies inspired a new approach to governance, one that valued flexibility, insight, and courage alongside ritual and precision. Solara and Kaelin remained by his side, each in their own way influencing the empire's path. Solara focused on steady leadership, nurturing alliances and maintaining balance within the court. Kaelin embraced innovation, daring action, and challenge, pushing both the empire and Elias to explore new possibilities. Together they created a dynamic that transformed not just the political landscape, but the culture of the empire itself. One evening, as Elias walked across the palace balcony overlooking the shimmering city, Solara joined him. The twin moons reflected on the water below, and the lights of the city glimmered like stars fallen to the earth. "You have changed the course of our history, Elias," she said softly. "The Kalari have long believed themselves the pinnacle, of wisdom, but your presence has reminded us that courage, creativity, and heart matter just as much as tradition. Kalen appeared from the shadows, leaning casually against the railing. And you've proven that humans are more than just observers. You inspire, you act, and you lead. The Empire will never be the same, and neither will we. Elias looked at them both, feeling a deep sense of connection and purpose. I came here to represent humanity, he said. I did not expect to find this responsibility, this bond, or this opportunity, but I am honored. Humanity is capable of great things, and together we have proven it. The sisters nodded, their expressions a mixture of pride and respect. The city below was alive with energy, its people safe, its leaders united, and its future filled with potential. Elias realized that the trials, the politics, and the battles had all led to this moment. A human standing not as a visitor or outsider, but as a valued participant in a thriving civilization. In the quiet moments that followed, Elias understood something profound. The universe was vast, filled with challenges, unknown civilizations, and endless possibilities. But humanity had a place within it, not as weak or dependent, but as capable, resilient, and remarkable. The courage, ingenuity, and stubborn spirit that had carried humans across Earth and through the stars had now shaped the destiny of an alien empire. He turned to Solara and Kalen, feeling the weight and the promise of the future. We have faced danger, politics, and impossible trials, he said. But together we have created something stronger than